is Charlie, and this is not the beginning of another reading vlog. Ordinarily, yes, it would be, but I have been holidaying in Whitby for the last week, and because of that, I did not record anything whilst away apart from footage, clips of mostly the beach, mostly the seaside. We did not go up to the Abbey this year. We did not go up to the Abbey last time either. I was holidaying with my mother and Sally again. Sally is my dog. She is a Jack Russell. If you don't know this by now, then what are you doing here? So, today I thought I would just share what I got up to on my holiday. A nice little rambling video. Before that, I should say that I recorded 2 videos to go online whilst I was away and then didn't edit them or upload them, so they're not here. Nor have I shaved. But I suppose what I should begin with, given the nature of this channel, is the books that I took away with me. I went to my good friend Charlie of Charlie Brook Reads and I said to her, look, these are all the books I'm trying to decide between. I think there were 8. What do I take with me? And so one book that I had to take with me all along was Mr Scarborough's Family by Anthony Trollope, as I was beginning a buddy read with Katie of Books and Things of this book on the Wednesday. I am currently behind in my reading. We said that we would read 4 chapters a day, and I stuck to that for the first 2 days, the Wednesday and the Thursday, despite it being exceptionally busy whilst we were away. But then on the Friday, I read nothing at all because that was the day we were coming home. Saturday, I was exhausted because I did not sleep the entire week, but I'll talk about that in a minute. And then yesterday, I was finishing off a jigsaw and reading something different, but I will talk about that in a moment. I also took Anno, Dracula by Kim Newman. Now, I did make it 146 pages into this book. This came from choosing to read in the mornings and in spare moments, and I did bring this book with me on Friday in my rucksack so that if I did get a spare moment to read, then I would do. And I took this, and I was glad that Charlie agreed about this one, because for the last few years I've read a Dracula adaptation or sequel every October, and this was the one that I chose to read this year because I originally purchased this book with Charlie in Crewe 2 years ago, but I'd got another 2 books I was reading that were Dracula themed that year, and I can't remember whether I got around to it last year. When I was away, there was a book that I saw, and I was trying to remember whether I'd read it or not, and I really need to go back through my journals and see which Dracula books and Dracula adaptations I read. I also thought that it was a good idea to read this while I was in Whitby. And it does get mentioned in here a bit as well. Not too much, but it was there. I also decided to start reading Skandar and the Unicorn Thief by A.F. Steadman. This is a hugely popular children's book series at the moment that is probably along the same lines as a very popular children's series from when I was a child. And I say that because I can remember being younger and seeing the author of that series in stadiums and on television and in interviews, and she's surrounded by these adoring fans. And I saw the same thing with A.F. Steadman and all these children just being so thrilled by the books and the want to read, and I had to see what that was about. There is a great sense of world building within this book. I don't know that the book is doing much more than that, 228 pages in, but I didn't read a lot of this whilst I was away. I think I read about 70 pages, which took me over where I'd read last year. And I sent Charlie a message saying, I'm really glad that children have this book. And I think that had I been a child now reading this book, then it would have been a compulsive series for me as well. I do think that it is a standout in children's literature, but it's not something that I think I like as an adult. However, the reason that I wanted to read this is because I took notebooks away with me to plan my own middle grade book that I had the idea for back in June. You might remember me talking about mushrooms inspired my new novel and this sort of thing. And I wrote the start of that. I think I wrote about 10,000 words of that. I'd have to go and check. But I realised I was telling a lot of the story, and I needed to go back and I needed to read some children's literature. And as I said about doing with other books that I was reading last week, I needed to inform myself as a writer on the craft and look at the structure and where things were happening to properly formulate it in my head, because I've got ideas for scenes and everything. This, I think, is a very well-told story. Weirdly, said to Charlie I wasn't going to continue reading it. I thought I was going to DNF it, and then I sat there yesterday after finishing a jigsaw and read another 150 pages. I planned to finish it, but other things came up, namely looking for a car and watching Drag Race UK. And then finally, the book that I actually did read while I was away was Tormentil by Ian Humphreys. Ian was our guest at Poems and Pints this month, and I really enjoyed what I heard from him. And this collection has one of my favourite themes, although it's a very sad theme, and it's very sad the events that had to occur for this theme to be explored, namely the death of Ian Humphreys' mother. But this is a collection that discusses grief, but it also discusses nature as well, which are two of my favourite themes, especially when it comes to poetry. This poet is one of those poets that, as I was reading this collection, I ended up thinking, I cannot call myself a poet. I do not have this skill. It's really one of those fantastic things where it makes me question everything I'm doing as a writer, and that's what happened with this collection. I know that Joy has read this collection as well, and she agreed with me. Basically, I started reading this on Monday night. What happens whenever I'm away, regardless of how comfortable the beds are, it just seems to set off my insomnia worse than ever, and I notice every small noise, even though it wasn't that noisy at all. We were down a back street and it was secluded. I just couldn't sleep, and so I read this until about 1 o'clock in the morning when I switched off the light, and then when I got up in the morning, my mother was still in bed, so I took this downstairs, got a cup of tea, and sat on the settee and read this at about 6:30 in the morning on Tuesday. And honestly, maybe that's how I should start doing my reading, just getting up and reading for an hour in the morning. It'll never happen because I don't go to sleep until late because I can't sleep, and then I don't wake up until late because I haven't slept. So yeah, enjoyed this. My current plan at the moment is to finish Skandar today, finish Anno Dracula some point, catch up with Mr Scarborough's family so that I finish this in time for the end of October. For me, this has been a very intriguing Anthony Trollope book so far. Mr Scarborough has chosen to disinherit his eldest son by saying that he was born out of wedlock, but then the son has gone missing. And I want to see how this turns out. I have an idea as to how it's going to go, but I want to see whether my suspicions are proved correct. Two of the books I took with me were notebooks. I was going to use this notebook for the new middle grade book because it's got a hair on it, and I've had these notebooks by Jackie Morris since 2014. So 10 years I've held on to these, waiting for the special story that I'm going to write. At the time, I thought that it was going to be this epic novel set in a farming community, but I've since transferred the ideas for that to the Alice Valentine series, so it's not one huge book. The tale is separated out over what should be 5. The hair has become an important motif to me because I started looking at Celtic animal symbolism. Whenever I seem to write anything magic or mystical, I always end up going back and looking at Celtic symbolism and the gods and goddesses of that time, the worshipping, allowing it to influence the way I take the story. But certain aspects of what I was planning had turned up in Skandar, and I thought, well, that doesn't mean that we can't still tell the story. I feel like I'd allowed the story that I'd created in June, the idea of it, to expand in ways that it didn't need to. And so I just went back to basics when I got home. I didn't do any writing in those notebooks while I was away. I waited till I got home and I went back to my original plan, and I saw that all these things I'd come up with were not in that original story, the original few lines that I came back from the forest and just scrawled away because they were so fixed in my mind. So I did note down points, some like what I think should be the end of Act 1, the end of Act 2 and that sort of thing, which was a different thing for me to do because I've never done that before. I've always been very focused on just writing this happens, then this happens, then this happens as bullet point styles, and then going and filling that in, or taking a bullet point and expanding what needs to happen within that. So that was the reading that I didn't do and the writing that I didn't do. Let's talk about Whitby then. So Whitby is somewhere that me and my mother have enjoyed for 11 years now. On my 21st birthday, my mum said that she would take me to Rome to celebrate. So we got our passports, and then she told me she didn't have the money, which was fine. I didn't have the money either, and yet I was determined that I was going to have my first ever holiday. I'd never been on holiday before that. It had only ever been day trips. It had never been somewhere that we had stayed. I can just remember a friend of mine saying to me, Whitby. I went straight onto the computer at work, looked at Whitby, it's like, yes. So when I got home, I found somewhere, booked it. My mother's only requirement was that we were within a few minutes of the beach because she would like to walk along it every day. And so we went to Whitby. And people have always questioned my decision to go to Whitby in October because it's the northeast coast. And they always have this idea that it's going to be incredibly grey and dismal and raining the entire time. And I have to say that touch wood, every single time that we have gone to Whitby in October, and we always go the same week in October, apart from the one year in 2016 when we went for my birthday, we've always gone in October. Yes, most days have been grey and overcast, but the first year we went there on the Thursday, it was exceptionally warm and we only bought clothes for autumn, so we were sweating. And that happened the second year as well. And this year, we had 2 overcast days, but they were still perfectly fine to walk along the sand. And then Thursday and Friday, the sun was out, it was rather warm, and it was utterly fantastic. And that's usually we would come back on a Friday morning, be home by Friday afternoon, and that's it, holiday over. We stuck around until late afternoon on Friday and didn't arrive home until near 8 o'clock in the evening. We were just enjoying ourselves so much. It went incredibly quickly. We don't know why it went so fast. We set off on Monday, and a tradition of ours has been to get coffee on the way and then set off. And so we went to Starbucks, and we're saying that now if we ever went to do this again, we probably wouldn't start with Starbucks because unlike last year, the coffee was bitter, and whatever they'd done to it, my mother ended up with a sore throat all evening. And I know we can't blame that because we can't be sure, but so we arrive, we weren't able to walk along the beach on the first day because the tide was in, and we wandered around. My mother, we went to get coffee, and she comes back to the flaming bench with 2 huge tubs of ice cream. I'm talking like huge, like as somebody who's been off sugar for a very long time, you know, and like I'm not strictly off sugar. Nowadays I do allow myself the occasional bit, but still not a flaming tub full of mint chocolate chip ice cream. I'm looking at it like, so that happened. And then we went to this cottage that we were staying at. Here's another thing that usually happens when we're in Whitby as well, which again has just been a stroke of luck for us over the years. And I don't like to mention it in case it doesn't happen the next time we go. But this cottage, the owners had said, whilst there is a little bit of parking nearby, anybody can park there, and you might have to park a bit of a distance away. We were just lucky. We parked on this car park near where we were staying, took our bags in, and we're going to go and look for somewhere to park for the week. And a space opened up right by the cottage. So we went there. It was great. Then we decided we weren't going out again for the night. We wondered about crossing over the bridge and going for a drink, but because we've been travelling all day, once my mother was settled down on that settee, she wasn't moving. I had been pleasantly surprised because the internet had shown me the 2 white leather settees in this place. They'd also shown me that there was no table, so I borrowed a table from work to take with me. And anyway, this was just so I could do a jigsaw, and when I got the jigsaw there, the jigsaw wouldn't actually fill the table, so I had to move it to this counter that had these bar stools on. Admittedly, we weren't a fan of the bar stools. The bar stools were different from what we had seen online, which was also a good thing. The rooms proved bigger than we had anticipated. My mother's was like a flaming suite in a hotel. She was thoroughly impressed, and the photos online had not done this place justice. They had made it look incredibly small and cramped. And it is a small place, but the rooms upstairs were rather big. They'd provided these clocks you could charge your smartphones on. And first day there, we settled down with all this food we'd taken and stuck on 2 films. We watched Inside Out and Inside Out 2. Films we'd been told to watch for years. And, well, Inside Out we've been told to watch for a decade. Inside Out 2 only came out this year. But my sister had enjoyed them. We watched them. And I think my mother enjoyed them, but I was a bit like, kind of predictable. On the Tuesday, we walked a long distance down the beach. And then we crossed over. We stay on West Cliff, so we walked back along the beach and past the arcades and over the bridge to go to where all of the shops are, specifically the Whitby bookshop, but we bypassed this at first to go to the Abbey tea rooms because we really wanted coffee. I think they're actually called the Abbey Steps tea room because they're at the bottom of the 100 steps. And, they made me a gingerbread latte, which I just had to savour as much as I did the scone with jam and cream. Yeah, I had a scone. Huge it was. Amazing it was. Brilliant little cafe at the bottom of the steps. And we enjoyed it so much that we went back on the next day, the Wednesday. But unfortunately, there was a woman who kept shouting at her father in there, and that kind of ruined our experience, which was a bad thing. Firstly, she was having a go at him because he hadn't eaten toast an hour before, and the cafe she'd wanted to go to that was cheaper wasn't open, so she'd had to fork out £5 for a bacon sandwich for her father. He was paying. I think she was just thinking about her inheritance. She wasn't going to let him have a cup of tea, despite the fact that's what he wanted, because they have tea at home. He should be having a proper coffee if they're going to a cafe at those prices. I thought, my Christ, just let the man have his bacon sandwich and his tea. He raised you. So I got very annoyed at her. And that kind of spoiled the entire experience for me. I can't explain it. And my mother said to me as we were leaving, that's why we never go back to places. She said, once you've had a nice experience at a place, why would you go back to it? That's why we didn't go back to the bistro where I had the really nice poached eggs last year, because we'd had such a bad time. Well, we hadn't had a bad time. You know, the coffee was still great. My mum had really enjoyed her tea there, and I'd enjoyed my coffee. It was just these 2 people. And they allowed dogs in there. And they were really kind to the dogs, but then this woman was having a go about the dogs, and I just thought, it says dog friendly on the window. You know, they let you in. Sorry, that was mildly catty. Anyway, after that, on the Tuesday, I went to the Whitby bookshop and I bought 2 books and a diary and a bookmark. And I kept wondering what Sal was interested in. And I'd looked in the children's book section and I looked at a few things, but didn't come away with anything. And she kept pulling me back. And so eventually I decided, fine, I'll let you. And so I let her go back to the children's book section. And I didn't know she'd seen a large Paddington bear. And I told her she couldn't have it. And honestly, it was like I told a toddler they weren't allowed a toy. She started sulking with me. And she would not. She then decided that she wasn't paying attention to me. She went around to every single other customer in that shop wanting a fuss. And if you know my dog, she hates being fussed by strangers, especially when she's on a walk, when she's anywhere. She won't go near other people when she's on a walk. She'll fake out that she'll have a fuss. But this time she was letting everyone fuss over her because I said she couldn't have a Paddington bear. And she was hoping that they'd let her. Well, they didn't. But then on the Wednesday, she tried to drag me back into the bookshop. And on the Thursday as well, I did take her in a few times, and we didn't buy anything the next 2 days. I bought 2 more books on the Friday, and I'll show you them in another video. Honestly, I just had to start taking her into the bookshop just so that I could show her this Paddington bear, but she wasn't having it. But now my mum said, because of how upset me dog got, if I get a Paddington bear into the charity shop, I've got to buy it for me dog. Anyway, we did end up spending a lot of money in the Tate Hill Tavern. because they served Theakston's Old Peculiar, and that is a favourite drink of mine. They also did some amazing food. And so the Wednesday we went in there after seeing it on the Tuesday, because on the Tuesday we just went back to the Dolphin, which was a mistake. When we first ever went there, great place the Dolphin was, now it's gone downhill. We went across the road to, well, back over the bridge, to someone we'd seen that said they sold cheap pints. They did sell cheap pints. If you're a local, we got charged full price. We weren't going to dispute it though, we just left it. And when we went past, it was incredibly raucous and all these blokes being blokes, and we thought, yeah, probably wasn't our setting with blokes being blokes. There's several pubs in Whitby that can be a bit like that, very blokey local places, but that, you know, when we first went, I think we fit in. Ever since I started putting hairspray in my hair, no. So we started enjoying the Tate Hill Tavern, and we went in there on our last day, and originally we planned to get something from the chippy, and I saw how much it was going to be, and they did food, and we thought, well, we've enjoyed the food here before, we may as well have food here again. So we did, which went completely against the thing that we'd said earlier in the week about never returning somewhere. So yeah, there are my recommendations for you from the week for places to eat and drink: the Abbey Steps Tea Room and the Tate Hill Tavern. On our last day, we also, once we packed the car and moved it to somewhere, we went to Beckett's of Whitby, which we've always walked past before, and I'm certain they have turned 2 units into 1 unit, because I recall this being a lot bigger. It is also a second-hand bookshop, but again, they once had a wall full of books, and now they just have about 3 of the slim IKEA shelves dedicated to terrible cookbooks, really. But they did do a nice vegetarian breakfast, and they did do a nice coffee. We'd had 2 takeaways on the Thursday before we went to the beach, and then on the Friday we decided we'd go there for breakfast. That was that, really. And we said it passed incredibly quickly, and we've never done our holiday so relaxed as we did it last week. I think it comes from knowing a place though, and knowing what you like. And unfortunately, my mother's issues with her legs mean that she would no longer be able to walk up the steps to the Abbey. But we've also done it 3 times, and as much as it's a very nice place to go, it doesn't really change that much. It's a ruin. It's going to remain ruined. And you can see it from every single point you stood at in Whitby. You don't really need to go and explore it once you've explored it once. At least that's what we say to ourselves when we don't go. Really, one of the things that we enjoy most is treating it like we've treated our days out this year. There have been some times where we've taken days off work and we've just gone for a day trip somewhere, Bakewell or Chester or something like that. I think they've mostly been Bakewell this year. We've planned to do Crewe and stuff, but we just like Bakewell. And so that's how we ended up treating Whitby, really. Incredibly relaxed, going for a walk with the dog in the morning. And like, I felt sorry for my dog. When we got back on Saturday, she slept from... Well, we got back on Friday night, and she immediately went to sleep, having slept in the car as well. And I worked out when she finally woke up on Saturday that she had slept for 14 hours straight. And we didn't walk her on Saturday because she didn't come out from under the covers, and she spent most of her time sleeping. So I think we did exhaust her, because, you know, she's used to maybe an hour to 2 hours every day at home, but getting some days off when I'm at work. Whereas last week for 5 days, she walked an hour on Monday, and then from Tuesday to Friday, she walked for at least 7 hours straight every day. I hope you enjoyed me rambling about Whitby, because it was a strangely relaxing time of walking, coffee, beer, watching films. We watched Dinner Ladies, even though we've seen it tons of times. My mother was tired and just wanted to watch something we enjoyed. I showed her the TV show Mandy, and then on Thursday night she came back a little bit squiffy, so I watched The Muppets Christmas Carol and The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, trying to get this jigsaw finished. We got a jigsaw finished last year. We didn't get one finished this year, and I don't think we'll take a jigsaw away with us next time, because we don't have the time for them. I didn't even have time to read. We definitely didn't have time to do a jigsaw, because we were revelling in our days away and going around shops, and some shops have started being more dog friendly than they were when we went last time. So when they've said they're dog friendly, we're like, yeah, okay, then we'll come in, we'll have a look round, because Sal doesn't like being left outside. She's very much got a pack mentality. That was me, me mother, and the cell going to Whitby. I hope you haven't minded this sort of video. It's been a long time since I've just sat and rambled at you for half an hour, but I hope that you can appreciate this what I did on my holidays type of video, because I enjoyed myself. I, again, as I keep saying, can't believe it went so quickly, and I was a little bit glad to get home simply to sleep, but I can't deny that we were looking to see whether we'd be able to stay for a few extra days. Unfortunately, if we'd wanted to stay for the weekend, they would have doubled the price of what we paid. So it wasn't to be. But alas, alack, and all that, we are home. We enjoyed ourselves, and my mother was looking to go back in April until I pointed out that her birthday falls around Easter week, so the kids will be off school. I don't know when I'll be away again because I've got to buy a car. If you would like to talk about anything that I talked about in this video, then please feel free to let me know in the comments. Where are some of your favourite places to visit? Do you like to holiday in your home country? Or, you know, just wherever you are in the world, tell me some of your favourite places to go. If you've been to Whitby, let's chat about that as well. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, because until next time, that is all.